in the papers this morning. I have all my papers here, but also on the monitor we'll be capturing what is captured there. And we begin with the Daily Nation. In fact, there you have it. This is what is on the front page of the DN. Revealed cooking oil and rice tycoons. Well, Trade Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria yesterday tabled a list of 11 companies contracted by the Kenya National Trading Corporation to import various commodities in a plan to lower food prices. 4 of them, which bagged 6.85 billion deals, are linked to city businesswoman Mary Wambui. Who is she? We're going to get to that. It's on page 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation. And these are all the numbers that you need to know from this. These are some of the monies that were allocated to the companies who are now linked to the businesswoman Mary Wambui. There's a 2.5 billion shilling billion deal, 1.95 billion, 1.2 billion, 1.2 billion. That's quite a huge amount of money, amounting to that 6.84 billion. Is it an accounting anomaly? We'll be trying to take a look at that. This is what is captured on the front page of the Daily Nation, and also on the 6th and 7th, which gives you a more in-depth analysis of really what this is all about and why there's such a huge debate on this particular issue, and if this is that scandal in the making where 22 farms were pre-qualified, but criteria of awarding tenders has really raised so many questions on this issue. Let's see what else we have inside the Daily Nation. Search for missing Titanic sub like going into space. Well, rescuers trying to find the, or is it an orca-sized submersible? All right, so this is what actually has been developing for quite some time now. I think it's past 2 days or so. Rescuers were trying to find the orca-sized submersible that vanished on its way to visit the wreck of the Titanic, facing a huge task that will test the limits of technical know-how with only a very slight chance of success. That's according to the experts. Teams around the world are now racing against the clock, and they were doing that on Tuesday to locate the vessel and its 5-person crew before their oxygen runs out, with little more than a day's supply left. In fact, it is estimated that the oxygen that has been left there can only last up until Thursday morning, I believe. So they are scouring about 7,600 square miles. That's about 20,000 square kilometers area of the North Atlantic to a depth of more than 2 miles. That's almost 4 kilometers, which is not easy. It's quite pitch dark, but it has to be a race against time to find this submersible. If you can be able to see, these are some of the gentlemen who are inside that submersible that went to see the wreck of the Titanic. Unfortunately, the signal was lost, and now there is no trace of that submersible, and there is a lot of panic. So this vessel was just carrying 3 passengers when it vanished on Sunday. Lost at sea, it says, but we hope that something can come out of this, and so hopefully they can be manage to get these people who are inside there, the crew, which is 1 pilot, I believe, and the 3 passengers inside that submersible. All right, that's what's happening so far, and it's a race against time. Okay. And also, Ruto convoy caught up in Naivasha crash. President William Ruto was, however, not in the car at the time of the accident, as he had taken a helicopter after an event in Naivasha. However, 2 members of his presidential escort team sustained injuries yesterday after a vehicle in the presidential motorcade overturned in the middle of the road at Mlimanugu area. That's in Moi South Lake Road in Naivasha. The driver of the presidential escort vehicle, which resembled the official car President William Ruto uses, although we could not independently verify this, is said to have lost control while trying to negotiate a sharp bend along the winding route. However, President William Ruto was not inside the car. He did take a helicopter after the event, but we will be trying to get more details of really what transpired there and what really led to that crash. Okay, but you can see the pictures beforehand when the president, actually very interesting picture there, President William Ruto trying to fix a tire during the Safari Rally 2023 shakedown at Loidia, that's in Naivasha, Nakuru County, yesterday. Okay, and that's what is happening there. Meanwhile, this is what you ought to know and keep in mind, because I don't have a belt here, but we're told to tighten our belts now as members of parliament endorse the 16% VAT on fuel, which means Kenyans will from July 1st be forced to make sure that those belts are quite tight some more, after Kenya Kwanza MPs bulldozed their way and raised the tax on fuel from 8% to 16% as proposed in the Finance Bill 2023, which means the ruling coalition MPs used their numerical strength to defeat a spirited opposition by Azimio legislators. Out of 272 MPs who were present and voting, 184 Kenya Kwanza MPs voted to approve the increase of tax on petroleum products, while 88 Azimio lawmakers voted against it. The bullish Kenya Kwanza MPs had been emboldened by an earlier ruling by the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula, who barred any changes to Clause 28 that increases the VAT on petroleum products. Yesterday, we saw Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi and Minority Whip Junet Mohammed warning Kenya Kwanza regime to prepare for mass demonstrations, a possible uprising and eventual collapse of what they say will be of the Kenya Kwanza administration. It's the warning that they're saying, but really that is the situation that we are facing right now. That means that things will be quite tight, is it? Let's see what else was captured here. All right. State on the sport of a physical indiscipline. Well, President William Ruto's government is receiving quite a bashing from a parliamentary committee chaired by his close ally for submitting supplementary budget estimates to the National Assembly for approval barely 2 weeks to the end of the financial year. A report tabled in the National Assembly on the 16.3 billion expenditure incurred in the 2022-2023 financial year without the approval of MPs. Now, the Budget and Appropriations Committee, chaired by Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro, noted that given the closeness to the end of the financial year, some of those expenditures may not be realized. The committee is also noting that bringing supplementary estimates to the House for approval too close to the end of the financial year impedes the oversight work of the House. And there's no time to really interrogate those expenditures. Of that 16.3 billion, 5.1 billion is in recurrent and 11.3 billion, they say, is in development expenditure. All right, so that again is what is happening. There's been a lot of concern and a lot of debate on how the government has been using money and spending money, especially now as we come to the close of the financial year 2022-2023. We're moving forward to the next financial year. The debt level is quite high, and of course the budget that is expected to be funded by taxpayers has created another debate. The opposition has been against it. It's been a whole huge debate even as the Finance Bill 2023 is still in Parliament up until today as they vote on some of the amendments within that particular bill. All right. Let's see, Daily Nation, what else do you have for us? Revealed, this is what we had captured on the front page, which you can, once you get your Daily Nation, you can just have a look at what the numbers mean. This is on the issues of the tycoons who apparently have bagged the rice cooking oil deals. And the lady Mary Wamboi, who is she? She was then the United Democratic Alliance Dispute Resolution Committee Vice Chair. You can take a look at why she is mentioned in this and what her role is in all this particular conversation. All right, and you can get that also. I'm not going to give you everything. You need to buy your paper to see. And also, why cooking oil could cost more after couriers move. There's also really related to this particular story on the award of the tenders in terms of the government contracts. Meanwhile, Odwol demanded 1 million share for his office, senators told. This is in battles here. Deputy Governor William Odwol, who demanded apparently 1.12 million presidential chair upon assuming office. A Senate committee hearing his impeachment case was told yesterday. It's very interesting. He allegedly demanded that his office be soundproofed at a cost of 2 million shillings. But he's defended his position on that. They also cited interference with procurement processes and intimidation of county officers in the decision to impeach Odwol. He is yet to face the Senate committee, so this is what is expected to happen. In fact, he did face the Senate Special Committees at County Hall yesterday. There's a lot that is that in his defense. In fact, he had told the committee that he had nothing to prove, as the impeachment process was a sham and a violation of the Constitution. He was represented by lawyer Paul Nyamodi, who argues that none of the charges passes the threshold of impeachment. So we'll be also keeping an eye on that. It's something that's been developing from that part of the country. Meanwhile, Mackenzie gets day in court as follower dies in custody. On the day that controversial preacher Paul Mackenzie case starts in court, it emerged that one of his followers, Juma Buyuka, had died of complications arising from starvation. Senior Principal Magistrate Yusuf Shikanda had that Buyuka died while receiving treatment at Malindi Hospital. Mackenzie and his followers are being investigated over the Shakahola massacre, which has so far claimed the lives of at least 340 people. The court also had that at least 73 children of those people were, children and died. So that is quite what we know as a devastating development on this investigation over the Shakahola massacre. Meanwhile, President stripped of his powers to appoint a majority of the Judicial Service Commission members. Well, the Supreme Court has stripped the President powers to appoint a majority of the members to the Judicial Service Commission. The court also ruling that it is illegal for the National Assembly to vet the suitability of a person nominated by the Public Service Commission. All right, according to the court, out of the 11 JSC members, the President can only appoint 2, which is 1 man and 1 woman, to represent the public. However, he has no powers to appoint the 7 members elected or nominated by their peers in professional or statutory bodies to represent them at the admission. That's according now. That's the final ruling of the court. But also importantly is that the court also holds that the JSC members drawn from the professional bodies and the PSC do not need vetting and approval of the National Assembly before assuming the roles at the commission. Okay, let's wind up now. We're done with the daily paper, but also if you're interested in understanding why there's a new tilapia type in Lake Victoria built to enhance fish output, you can get that on the 12th page of the Daily Nation. But also what we'll be capturing in our conversation in a little while, because it touches on our conversation, Kenya given 28 billion for refugee transition. Well, the government's plan to implement the transition of Dadaab and Kakuma refugee camps into integrated settlements has received a major boost with a donation of over 28 billion into the project, which means the 5-year project dubbed Shirika Plan seeks to transform the refugee camps into integrated settlements for both refugees and host communities in efforts to have refugees become self-reliant and contribute to the economy. While calling on the Kenya to implement the plan fully, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee Filippo Grandi yesterday actually said the amount was mobilized from various development partners. But really, what does that mean for Kenya when we're now integrating the refugee camps now into integrated settlements for the refugees and host communities? All right, so we'll get to that. Business Daily, just quickly on the front page. Budget controller flags 5.7 billion salaries paid out outside the payroll. All right, that's quite a story. The COB, which was now flagging this amount of money, which is actually 5.66 billion on salary payments outside approved payroll systems on the first 9 months of the Kenya Kwanza government. This is the findings of that review of the salary expenditures by ministries, departments and agencies in 9 months to March 2023, which now raises the questions about the commitment by the government to instill transparency in its wage bill expenditure. Okay, just a little bit on the ticker of the Business Daily as well. State sees shilling falling to 150 mark when it repays Eurobond. Well, the government at this point is projecting the shilling could weaken further to 150.76 by the time it is paying its debut Eurobond in June next year, signaling unabated pressure on the country's exchange rate. That's on page 4 of the Business Daily. Airtel also takes on Safaricom with 5G rollout next month, and debt expenses surpasses cost of running Kenyan government by 44.7 billion. This is about the cost of servicing Kenya's rising debt, which is surpassing the spending on recurrent expenses for the national government, in part reflecting President William Ruto's pledge to prioritize obligations to creditors over payments such as salaries. So what does that mean for the state of the economy? That one you can also get on the Business Daily. And also what is captured earlier on in terms of that 16% VAT on fuel. How will this hit households, motorists from July? You can get that full report there on really how that will have an impact in terms of the cost of living. And this is measured mainly by the issue of the consumer price index and is expected to edge further up with the rate of inflation rising from the 8% to the 16% once that comes into effect. Okay, still almost the same thing that's captured on Taifa Leo as well. Wabunge wauma mahasla, yani safari ya maisha magumu yaanza rasmi baada ya bunge kupitisha kipengee kinachopandisha bei ya mafuta. Mswada wa fedha 2023, wabunge kwa mara nyingine wametelekeza wananchi waliowapiga kura na kupitisha sheria ambayo itaongezea mzigo wa gharama ya maisha hata zaidi. 184 kati yao waliunga mkono vipengee vya kukandamiza mahasla huku 88 wakipinga. Hata hivyo, la kuudhi zaidi ni kwamba wengine walihepa wasijulikane wanakosimama. And you can get the full splash of that, the Swahili report on the second page of Taifa Leo, and this is where you have it. You can get all this. Pambana na hali yenu, wabunge waambia raia, I beg your pardon. And it's a report there by Leonard Onyango and Charles Wasonga on really how that once it takes effect, the 8% VAT on petroleum products to 16% will have an effect on the economy and especially the common Kenyan. What does it mean in a situation where inflation is on an all-time high, the cost of living is unbearable? It's going to be quite tough for Kenyans, isn't it? Let me actually introduce my panelists this morning. Perhaps I would also just quickly like to hear your thoughts on really what they feel about this particular, bill, this amendment that was in the finance bill that has actually been passed now. I am this morning joined by Professor Naomi Damba, a professor of defense and foreign policy. Very good to see you, Prof. It's been quite long to have you back in studio, but good to see you.
Thank you, Zainab,
for
having us.
Fantastic. We also have Dr. Abduhab Abdusamad, who's the chair of the Institute Horn of Africa Strategic Studies. Good to see you after some time also. Welcome to our studio. And also Nasongo Muliro, who's a foreign policy and security expert at GLOSSEPS. Very good to see you, Bwana Nasongo. And just very quickly, so this is what is happening. It's captured everywhere on our papers this morning. It's something that is of interest to all Kenyans. And because we're all Kenyans, this is what we should be focusing on at this point, right? I just want to hear your quick thoughts on what you feel about this particular, because it's going to affect all of us. Even as you're making your way to the studio today in the morning, on the 1st of July, perhaps you'll have to have more petrol in your cars to drive all the way here. So we're told to tighten your belts as, the 16% VAT on fuel has been approved. Prof, what do you think of it? Just quick remarks.
Well, Zainab, one very obvious fact is the common disjoint between the elected official and the citizenry. And sometimes I wonder if they live in another planet, because this will have devastating impact on productivity of citizens, from matatu to small businesses and everything. And so when you are trying to improve the economy, and then you're creating that kind of tax on areas that are really vital for improving economy, I'm not sure the thought behind it, whether just to collect more money very quickly. Kibaki did it very wisely, but he was very sensitive to the people. So time will tell where they're going.
Right. Dr. Abdul Samad, you know, the government took over the reins of power saying we are already in a very tight economic situation as a country. And so we have to find ways of increasing our revenue because we need to, first of all, plug our debt deficit. And we need to run a government as well. Do you think, though, however, slapping us with a double of, you know, VAT on these fuel products is going to be the solution?
There's a recession, a global recession in the world. Economy are very tight everywhere in the world, including Kenya. So government, in fact, they are trying to at least, you know, to repay the debt. And in fact, the citizens of the nation, they must know that we are undergoing a very, very, you know, hard time. So that at least if you don't help the government, at least, you know, to overcome the problems, then it will be a, you know, you're just adding another problems. So I think we have to support the government programs. At least people, they, you know.
But under the strict economic situations, does it rid of the tone of the rising cost of living? Yesterday we were talking about a mother who says, I can only feed my children 1 meal a day.
Let me finish, yeah?
Right.
You know, if you look at the Lebanon today, Lebanon is now a collapsed state because of the economic problems existing in Lebanon and that part of the world. So if the government together with the public come together and effectively face the reality, we cannot overcome the problems. That's why government, they have, in fact, how can we pay the debt? How can we, in fact, you know, the whole world is in recession. So at least we are in hard time. Let's at least support the government.
All right.
Yeah.
Bwana Songo, your thoughts?
I think also it's true that there are global perspectives to this. Everywhere, even the US has rewired its own economy and called it renewed economic leadership. And we are all looking at that and seeing where it's going. I'm just seeing here that even Tanzania itself has now banned the use of the dollar as an exchange internally, trying to control that because everybody. And we would say that, yes, you know, what would we have done? They should do something. We should see that something is happening. And the only something is either foreign aid and internal revenue collection, the taxes. But our biggest fear is that even as you do this, I think Prof was mentioning, we saw that in Haiti at one time, that when the IMF and the World Bank gave them prescriptions and they implemented them to the letter, there was a revolution. So you balance them. There is the political economy that as you look at hardcore economics, there is a soft part, the politics. So we must, as we collect money, also think very fast of the suffering of the people, cushioning them, as we think of long term. I think that is where there is a challenge. The collection is not bad, but what happens now? Maybe people will die by the time our economy will be doing very well. So you balance both in the political economy. And the fear also is that as we put these measures, which almost are external, we are seeing also, which we should not have seen, snippets of corruption. So that is the biggest fear, that is it running parallel to the struggle. We are seeing NHIF, we are seeing cooking oil and the rest running alongside these austerity measures. That's our biggest fear also.
Right. Yes, Prof.
If you look at the case of Singapore, is the fought corruption, you know, the case of China, the fought corruption that Muliro is talking about. There's you know, you don't just go taxing people, but you need to tax wisely. Because several millionaires and billionaires have vetted out of Kenya. These are big-time investors who are creating job and productivity.
So there must be a balance, is what
there
you're
has
saying.
to be a balance.
All right.
You know, Kibaki did it very wisely. And that is what we need to get to. We don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, my Lord, we have crisis. You know, so Dangote, the biggest investor in Africa,
Right.
He's saying he can't come to a place where he's not welcome. He cannot invest in that place. So we need to carefully craft a policy. These folks need to settle down and look at the short, mid-term, and long-term.
Indeed. Yes, yes, Doc, you wanted to add something?
I'm going to a few things, yeah. It's difficult, this country to fight the corruption. Those who looted the country, left, right, and center are here. It's untouchable. It's untouchable. You cannot touch them. If you touch them, if you arrest them, the following day they should be on a demonstration on the street. So how can we assist? We are, in fact, we are part and parcel of the problem as citizens, because people who looted the country, they are here. Let them confiscate all what they looted. Let them return back to the treasury. Simple as that. Then we can easily pay what you call the debt. Simple as that. But who is going to do that? He can't do that.
We've never seen that happen, so I doubt we'll be able to see that happen in the future, correct?
It happened in Singapore.
Yes, but not in Kenya.
Okay.
That is a completely different, a completely different situation. Perhaps penalties like what we saw in China, or I don't know. Perhaps, but I don't know. So this is going to be an interesting thing to look out for, especially when that VAT takes effect on the 1st of July. However, back to what we are going to be focusing on today is on the issue of security in our region, especially in Somalia, our border with Somalia as well. We've seen a bit of Al-Shabaab intensify its insurgency within the northeastern part of the country, and also within Somalia itself. So what does that mean and portend in terms of the security there, and also a little bit of what is happening in the DRC as well? We know that ADF had staged an attack in Uganda as well, where 40 people were killed in that attack in a secondary school. So that is what is happening there. ADF is one of the outlawed militia groups that is operating within the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So